The icy wind howled through the dense pine forest, rattling the windows of an old wooden cabin perched on the edge of civilization. Inside, Aaron Hale sat in his worn-out armchair, sipping a steaming cup of coffee. The flames in the fireplace danced, casting long shadows against the rustic walls. It was a night like any other in the remote wilderness of northern Montana, cold, silent, and unyielding, until a sound broke the stillness. A faint scratching at the door, accompanied by a low, desperate whimper. Aaron furrowed his brows, setting down his mug. Stray dogs were rare in these parts, and wolves, well, they were never this close to human dwellings, unless something was terribly wrong. Cautiously, he reached for his rifle, a necessary companion in these isolated lands, before inching toward the door. Peering through the frost-kissed window, his breath hitched. There, bathed in the moon's eerie glow, stood two wolves. Their bodies trembled, ribs visible beneath matted fur dusted with snow. Their breaths puffed in desperate clouds, eyes locked, onto him with something that sent a shiver down his spine. Not aggression, not fear, but a silent plea. Aaron's instincts screamed at him to stay inside. Wolves were apex predators, not beggars. But as he studied them closer, he noticed something alarming: blood. Streaks of it smeared their fur, not their own, but fresh, as if they had been near something, or someone, injured. His grip tightened around the rifle. Were they leading him to something? Or was this some bizarre behavior brought on by desperation? Against every rational thought, he cracked open the door just an inch. The nearest wolf, a large, silver-coated beast, took a hesitant step forward, collapsing onto the porch with a pitiful whimper. Aaron swallowed hard. He had never seen wolves act like this. They were creatures of the wild, built to endure even the harshest winters. Something had driven them here, something unnatural. Then he heard it, a distant, guttural growl, not from the wolves before him, but from the tree line. His pulse quickened. He grabbed his flashlight and aimed it into the darkness. Twin yellow eyes blinked back at him from the forest's edge, followed by another, and another. The wolves before him weren't alone, and neither was he. Something was out there, something watching, waiting. He had a choice: shut the door and ignore whatever nightmare lurked beyond the porch, or let the creatures in and risk the unknown. Then, the silver wolf whimpered again, lifting its head just enough to nudge Aaron's boot with its nose. A silent plea. His mind raced. Every survival instinct screamed at him to stay out of nature's affairs, but something deeper, something primal, urged him otherwise. With one last glance toward the ominous tree line, Aaron inhaled sharply and stepped back, opening the door wider. "Get in," he murmured, and the wolves obeyed. Aaron barely had time to brace himself before the wolves limped inside, their frostbitten, bodies trembling as they collapsed onto the wooden floor. He quickly shut the door, locking out the howling winds and whatever else lurked beyond the trees. The silver wolf, the larger of the two, let out a weak whimper, its golden eyes flickering toward Aaron. The other, a smaller, dark-furred companion, curled up beside its partner, breathing heavily. Aaron knelt beside them, hesitant but determined. The blood on their coats was beginning to dry, but there was too much of it for him to ignore. His fingers hovered over the wound on the silver wolf's shoulder. It wasn't deep, but it had been made by something sharp. Claws? Teeth? His gut twisted. If these wolves had been attacked, then by what? Or worse, by whom? Before he could think further, a heavy thud echoed from outside. Something, or someone, had stepped onto the porch. Aaron's heart pounded as he reached for his rifle, his breath misting in the freezing air. The wolves stirred but did not growl, their ears pinned back in clear distress. Whatever was out there, it wasn't just another predator. It was something that made even these wild hunters afraid. Slowly, he moved toward the window, careful not to make a sound. The frost-coated glass obscured his vision, but he could make out a shadow. Tall, unmoving, watching. Then, as if sensing. His gaze, the figure stepped closer. A hand, an actual human hand, pressed against the window pane, fingers long and stiff, the skin pale and stretched taut over the bones. Aaron's blood ran cold. He expected a knock, a voice, something. But there was only silence. The wolves behind him whined, their bodies pressing closer to the warmth of the fireplace, as if they knew what stood outside wasn't human. Then came a sound that sent ice through his veins. A whisper, low and rasping, barely audible over the wind. "Let me in." Aaron gripped the rifle tighter, every muscle in his body tense. The wolves had sought shelter in his home not out of desperation, but out of sheer terror. Because something far worse was hunting them. Aaron's breath hitched in his throat as the whisper slithered through the cracks of the cabin like an icy draft. "Let me in." The voice was neither pleading nor demanding. It was something else entirely. Something hollow. Something wrong. Aaron's grip on his rifle tightened, his knuckles turning white. The wolves lay still behind him, their bodies curled close, their eyes locked on the door. The silver one let out a low, almost mournful whimper, pressing itself deeper into the warmth of the fire's glow. The shadow beyond the window remained motionless. Its hand, if it truly was a hand, stayed pressed against the frost-bitten glass. Aaron's instinct screamed at him to move, to do something, but his feet felt rooted to the wooden floor. Then, the whisper came again, this time from the other side of the cabin. "Let me in." Aaron spun toward the back window. His pulse thundered in his ears. The same outline, the same hand pressed against the glass, but it hadn't moved. It had appeared. He swallowed hard. No footprints in the snow outside. No sound of movement. Just that figure, waiting. His mind raced through the possibilities. Could it be a drifter? A lost traveler? But how could they be in two places at once? And why were the wolves, apex predators of the wild, shaking like frightened pups? Aaron took a slow step backward, positioning himself between the wolves and the unseen presence beyond the windows. His fingers itched to pull the trigger, but what was he even aiming at? The cabin's temperature seemed to drop by the second, his breath now visible in thick clouds. The fire, once roaring and alive, flickered erratically as if struggling against an unseen force. Then, the whisper came again. Only this time, it was inside the cabin. "Let me in." The wolves bolted upright, their ears flat against their heads, eyes darting around the room. Aaron barely had time to react before the silver wolf lunged, not at him, but at the shadows stretching unnaturally long across the floor. The cabin shook. The door rattled in its frame. The windows frosted over completely, blotting out the outside. Whirled Aaron's survival instincts kicked in. He had faced storms, wild animals, the merciless cruelty of winter itself. But this was something else. Something ancient. Something that had been waiting. And now, it was here. The air inside the cabin thickened, pressing against Aaron's chest like a heavy weight. His grip on the rifle tightened as he scanned the dimly lit room. The flickering fire cast erratic shadows against the walls, making it impossible to tell where the darkness ended and the unknown presence began. The whisper had come from inside. He was sure of it. The wolves stood alert now, their trembling bodies replaced with rigid tension. The silver one growled low in its throat, eyes locked on something Aaron couldn't see. The dark-furred wolf circled closer to him, its fur bristling. They weren't looking at the door anymore. They were looking at the far corner of the cabin. Slowly, Aaron turned his gaze in that direction. For a moment, there was nothing. Just the wooden walls of his cabin, lined with hunting gear, shelves of supplies, and an old rocking chair that had been there since his grandfather built this place. Then, the chair rocked. Aaron's heart slammed against his ribs. It was a single deliberate motion, as if someone had just risen from it. The wolves snapped their jaws, growls deepening, their bodies lowering into defensive stances. And then, the whisper came again, this time right behind him. "Let me in." Aaron spun, raising the rifle, but there was nothing, just empty air. Yet the voice had been so close, so near to his ear that he had felt the chill of its breath. The fire crackled violently, sputtering and spitting embers, as if reacting to an unseen force. The temperature continued to drop, ice creeping along the insides of the windows, sealing them shut with frost. Aaron knew one thing for certain now. Whatever this was, it wasn't human. His instincts screamed at him to run. But where? Outside, the storm raged mercilessly, and deep in his gut, he knew stepping beyond the cabin's walls would be even more dangerous. The wolves were protecting him. No, they were protecting themselves. They had sought his shelter not for warmth, but for safety. But if they weren't safe here, then where? The whisper came again, but this time it wasn't alone. A second voice joined it, and then a third. More voices layered over one another, a chorus of chilling whispers, all saying the same thing. "Let us in." The door creaked violently, the wood straining against an invisible force. The walls groaned, the wind outside howling as if something ancient and hungry was pressing against the cabin, trying to force its way inside. Aaron took a slow, deliberate breath. If this was going to be his last night, he wasn't going to go down without a fight. He raised his rifle, and then the door blew open. The door slammed open with an earth-shaking force, the wind howling into the cabin like a banshee's wail. Snow whipped inside in violent gusts, momentarily blinding Aaron as he shielded his face. The wolves reacted instantly, snarling, their fur standing on end. Their bodies braced against the onslaught of whatever had forced its way in. But there was nothing there. No figure, no monstrous entity. Only the howling storm and the biting cold. Yet the presence remained. The weight of unseen eyes pressed against Aaron's soul, making his skin crawl with an unnatural dread. Then, the voices changed. No longer whispers, they became murmurs, distorted, overlapping, as if countless entities spoke in hushed tones. Words flickered in and out of understanding, like voices carried on the wind from a distant place. Aaron clenched his jaw and took a step back, his rifle steady. The wolves flanked him, muscles coiled, ready to strike. The yow, silver one, let out a sharp bark as if warning whatever had entered that it was not welcome. The murmurs grew louder, and then the fire in the hearth went out. Darkness swallowed the room whole. Aaron's breath hitched as ice crawled up the wooden walls, spreading like veins of death, sealing him inside his own home. The temperature dropped to a suffocating chill, his breath turning into thick mist, his fingers numbed around the rifle's grip. A shadow moved, not from the storm, not from the wolves, from within. A silhouette coalesced in the center of the room, its form shifting like smoke trapped in the shape of something humanoid. It had no face, only a void where its features should have been. Yet Aaron felt its gaze pierce him, felt it looking through him as if searching for something buried deep in his soul. The murmurs ceased. The cabin fell deathly silent, and then it spoke. "You should not have let them in." Aaron's pulse thundered in his ears. The wolves growled low and steady, inching closer to him, their bodies tense. What? What do you mean?" Aaron forced the words out, though his throat felt tight, his voice barely above a whisper. The shadow did not move, but its presence thickened, suffocating, pressing against him from all sides. The ice cracked underfoot as it spread. "They are not what you think." Aaron's stomach twisted. He turned his gaze to the wolves. They stared back, their glowing eyes unwavering, their bodies tense, but not fearful. It was then he noticed their shadows, or rather, the lack of them. His blood ran cold. The fire had been the only source of light, and now that it was gone, the only shadows should have been swallowed by the dark. But the wolves stood there, fully visible, as if they weren't affected by the darkness at all, as if they were part of it. Aaron took a step back. The silver wolf cocked its head ever so slightly, watching him with something that wasn't quite animal. And then, the door slammed shut, trapping him inside. The silence in the cabin was suffocating. Aaron could hear his own heartbeat pounding in his ears as the icy darkness wrapped around him like a living entity. The wolves remained still, their glowing eyes fixed on him with an unsettling intensity. The shadow figure in the center of the room didn't move, but its presence thickened, pressing down on him like an unseen weight. Aaron clenched his jaw. "What do you mean? They aren't what I think? What are you?" The figure's voice was like a whisper carried on a frozen wind. "You invited them in. Now they are bound to you. And you to them." Aaron felt a chill run down his spine. His gaze flickered to the wolves, who stood motionless, their breaths visible in the icy air. The realization hit him like a hammer. He had let them inside without understanding what they truly were. Then, without warning, the silver wolf stepped forward. Its movements were smooth, almost unnatural. Aaron instinctively raised his rifle, but the wolf didn't flinch. Instead, it spoke, not in growls, not in howls, but in words. "You do not trust us, Aaron." His blood ran cold. The voice was low, almost melodic, but there was something ancient about it. Something that did not belong in the throat of an animal. Aaron's grip on the rifle tightened. What the hell are you?" The wolf's glowing eyes seemed to burn brighter. "Survivors, just like you. But survival comes at a cost." The shadow figure's whisper rose again. "And you have already paid it." Aaron shook his head. No, I didn't agree to anything. I just..." His words caught in his throat as pain lanced through his chest. He gasped, staggering back, dropping the rifle as a burning sensation spread through his veins. It was like frostbite seeping into his bones, but instead of cold, it carried something else, something alive. He looked at his hands, his fingers trembling violently. His veins darkened, pulsing with an eerie silver glow. The wolves watched him, unblinking, waiting. The shadow figure drifted closer. "The change has begun." Aaron fell to his knees, gasping as his breath came out in rapid, misty puffs. His vision blurred, shifting between the cabin and something else. Snow-covered ruins, a sky choked with swirling darkness, figures moving in the storm. He wasn't just seeing them. He was there. The wolves howled, and the sound was no longer just an animal cry. It was a summons, a call echoing beyond the walls of the cabin, beyond the storm, reaching something that had been waiting for him. His last thought before the darkness claimed him was a terrifying realization. He had never been the hunter. He had always been the prey. Aaron's body convulsed as the icy fire coursed through his veins. The cabin blurred around him, and for a fleeting moment, he felt as if he were being pulled through time itself. Images flashed before his eyes. Ancient forests bathed in silver moonlight, towering mountains shrouded in mist, and shadowy figures moving through endless snow. Then suddenly, it stopped. Aaron gasped, collapsing onto the wooden floor of the cabin, his breath ragged. His skin felt different, too tight, too strong. The silver glow in his veins had faded, but something within him had changed. He could feel it, humming beneath the surface of his being, waiting to be unleashed. The wolves remained still, their glowing eyes locked onto him. The silver one, now unmistakably the leader, stepped forward and spoke again. "You are no longer just a man, Aaron. You have been chosen." Aaron clenched his fists, his nails digging into his palms. "Chosen? For what? I didn't ask for this." The shadow figure loomed behind the wolves, its form shifting like mist in the flickering firelight. "You were marked the moment you let them in. The hunt has begun." Aaron pushed himself up, his muscles coiling with a newfound strength. "Hunt? What hunt?" The black wolf, silent until now, let out a low growl that sent a shiver down Aaron's spine. Silver One continued, "The ones who hunt us are coming, and now they will hunt you too." A cold wind howled through the cracks in the cabin walls, carrying with it the distant sound of approaching footsteps. many footsteps. Aaron turned towards the door, his heart pounding. The storm outside had thickened, but beyond the whirling snow, he could make out dark shapes moving toward the cabin. They were not human. Aaron's breath hitched. Shadows with glowing red eyes, tall and gaunt, their movements unnaturally fluid, closed in. He could feel their hunger, their malice. Whatever, he had become whatever the wolves truly were. These creatures were their enemies. The silver wolf bared its fangs. If you wish to live, you must fight. Aaron looked down at his trembling hands. He could still feel the power inside him, waiting to be unleashed. For the first time in his life, he wasn't sure whether to run or embrace the storm. The creatures were almost at the door. With a deep breath, Aaron made his choice. Aaron's breath formed ghostly puffs in the frigid air as he steadied himself. The pounding of his heart was drowned out by the howling wind and the approaching footsteps beyond the door. The creatures were here. The silver wolf moved to his side, muscles tense, eyes burning with a fierce glow. "They are relentless," it murmured. "But you are no longer weak." Aaron's fingers flexed and he felt the shift inside him, like an unseen force awakening. His senses sharpened. He could hear the crunch of snow underfoot, the rasping breath of the creatures, the low, guttural murmurs in a language he didn't understand. The door shuddered as something slammed against it. Bam! The wooden planks groaned under the pressure. The black wolf let out a deep growl, its fur bristling, while the silver wolf remained eerily calm. Aaron's instincts screamed at him to run, but something else, something new, urged him to stand, his ground. He clenched his fists, and a faint silver shimmer coursed through his veins. "They seek the power in your blood," the shadowy figure whispered from the darkness. "If they take it, you will cease to be." Aaron shot a glance at the figure. "And if I fight?" The wolves exchanged a knowing look before the silver one spoke. "Then you become what you were meant to be." Before Aaron could respond, the door exploded. Inward, shards of wood flying in all directions. A blast of icy wind rushed into the cabin carrying the scent of decay. And then, they stepped inside. Tall, skeletal beings cloaked in shifting shadows, their elongated fingers tipped with razor-sharp claws. Their eyes, red burning coals, locked onto Aaron with unholy hunger. Their mouths stretched into unnatural grins, revealing jagged, blackened teeth. Aaron's body tensed as something inside him roared to life. The first creature lunged. Before he even had time to think, Aaron moved. Faster than he ever had before. His body twisted, dodging the swipe of the creature's claws by mere inches. He struck out, his fist colliding with its chest. A deafening crack echoed through the cabin. The creature shrieked as it was thrown backward, smashing into the far wall. A moment of stunned silence followed. Aaron stared at his own hands in disbelief. The silver wolf let out a proud snarl. "Now, you see?" The remaining creatures hesitated only for a second before attacking all at once. The black wolf leaped forward, fangs bared, tearing into the nearest one, while the silver wolf slashed at another with a single swipe of its claws. Aaron didn't wait. Instinct took over. He ducked under a clawed swipe, grabbed a creature by its throat and slammed it into the ground with such force that the floorboards cracked. Another lunged at him, but this time Aaron didn't just dodge, he countered. His movements were fluid, precise, like he had been fighting all his life. He was changing, becoming something more. Creatures realized too late that their prey had become the predator, and Aaron had only just begun. Aaron's body trembled, with a newfound energy, his breath coming in sharp gasps as he surveyed the chaos unfolding in his cabin. The creatures, though ferocious, were beginning to falter. He could feel it, the tide of battle shifting in his favor. The silver wolf let out a low, approving growl. "You are awakening." Aaron didn't understand what he had become, but he knew one thing. He would not let these creatures take him. He lunged forward, his reflexes sharper than ever, dodging a razor-sharp claw and delivering a crushing blow to the nearest creature's chest. It shrieked, its form flickering like a dying flame before it collapsed into a pile of ash. The black wolf darted around him, snapping at another creature's leg and pulling it to the ground. Aaron didn't hesitate. He stomped his foot down on its skull, and it let out a final inhuman screech before vanishing into the air. But then, the cabin trembled. A deeper guttural growl resonated through the room, making Aaron's blood run cold. The remaining creatures retreated, forming a half-circle near the shattered doorway. Their red eyes flickered with something almost like fear. And then he saw it. A towering figure stepped forward, cloaked in swirling darkness. Its form was neither fully solid nor fully shadow. Jagged antlers extended from its head, and its glowing white eyes bore into Aaron's soul. The air in the cabin turned thick, oppressive like the weight of a coming storm. "You cannot escape what you are, child." The being's voice was a whisper and a roar all at once, filling every corner of the room. "Your blood is the key." Aaron's fingers twitched. The silver light in his veins pulsed brighter. "Who are you?" Aaron demanded. The creature chuckled, its voice like cracking ice. "I am the one who has been watching, the one who has been waiting." The silver wolf took a step forward, its fur bristling. "You will not take him." The shadowed entity tilted its head, amusement flickering in its ghostly eyes. "You think you can stop me?" Aaron clenched his fists. He didn't fully understand what was happening to him, but he knew one thing: he was done running. The storm outside howled, the wind slamming against the broken doorway. The black wolf bared its fangs. The silver wolf crouched low. Aaron took a deep breath. Then, all at once, the battle began again. The cabin shook with an unnatural force as the entity's presence grew more suffocating. Aaron's heart pounded in his chest, the silver energy coursing through his veins reacting violently to the darkness looming before him. The shadowed being took a slow, deliberate step forward. "You feel it, don't you? The power in your blood. The call of something far greater than you understand." Aaron tightened his grip, his fingers curling into fists as the silver wolf stepped protectively beside him. The black wolf let out a deep, menacing snarl. "I don't know what you are," Aaron spat, "but you're not taking me." The creature chuckled, the sound like 1,000 whispers merging into one. "Oh, but you are mistaken. I am not here to take you. I am here to awaken you." Before Aaron could react, the entity raised a clawed hand, and a wave of darkness surged forward. Instinctively, he threw up his hands, and a blinding pulse of silver light exploded outward, colliding with the shadows. Attack. The force sent Aaron stumbling backward, his body burning with unfamiliar energy. The wolves leapt into action. The black wolf lunged at the entity's legs, its teeth sinking into the shadowy form, but it was like biting into mist. The silver wolf launched itself at its chest, claws glowing with an eerie luminescence, tearing through the darkness with visible effect. The entity reeled, but it did not falter. "You are strong," it hissed, "but not strong enough." Aaron gritted his teeth. If he wanted to survive this, he had to tap into whatever power was awakening inside him. He closed his eyes, focusing, feeling the energy surging within. When he opened them again, the silver glow in his veins had spread, covering his arms, his chest, his entire body. He could feel the power now, like an ancient force stirring within him. With a roar, Aaron charged, his fists colliding with the shadow's core. The impact sent a shockwave through the cabin, knocking furniture aside and shattering what remained of the windows. The entity let out a shriek, its form flickering erratically as Aaron's silver energy burned through it. "Impossible!" The creature bellowed, its voice distorted. "You cannot..." Aaron didn't let it finish. He focused every ounce of energy he had into one final strike, his glowing hand piercing through the entity's chest. The being let out a deafening scream, the darkness around it imploding. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. Then, with a final burst of silver light, the shadow exploded into nothingness. The silence that followed was deafening. The wind outside had calmed. The suffocating darkness was gone. Aaron stood in the wreckage of his home, his body still thrumming with power. The wolves panted beside him, their eyes filled with something he could only describe as pride. Aaron exhaled shakily. What just happened? The silver wolf stepped closer, pressing its forehead against Aaron's leg. You have awakened, Guardian. Aaron swallowed hard. He had no idea what that meant, but he knew one thing. His life would never be the same again. Aaron stood amidst the ruins of his cabin, his breath still ragged from the battle. The silver energy that had once coursed through his veins was now fading, leaving behind a strange warmth in its place. The two wolves stood by his side, their eyes glowing in the dim firelight that flickered from the broken fireplace. Guardian? Aaron muttered, repeating the word that had been spoken. What does that even mean? The silver wolf took a step forward, its gaze intense. You are one of the chosen, Aaron. A protector of the balance between worlds. The entity you just fought was a Shadowborn, an ancient being that preys upon the essence of life. Had you not stopped it, this land would have fallen into eternal darkness. Aaron ran a hand through his disheveled hair, his mind reeling. This is insane. I'm just a guy trying to survive winter in the middle of nowhere. The black wolf let out a low growl. You were never just a man. Your blood carries the lineage of the first Guardians. This power has always been inside you, waiting to be awakened. Aaron shook his head, stepping back. No way. You expect me to believe that I'm some kind of chosen warrior? That I was meant to fight monsters? The silver wolf's eyes softened. We did not expect you to believe, but your instincts, your actions, prove that you are ready. You did not run. You fought, and you won. Aaron exhaled, his mind a storm of doubt and confusion. His entire life, he had been alone, surviving on his own. And now, in the span of a single night, he had fought an otherworldly creature, discovered hidden powers, and was being told that he had a greater purpose. If what you're saying is true, he said slowly, then what happens next? The silver wolf turned towards the dark forest beyond the ruins of the cabin. The Shadowborn was only a scout. More will come. They will not stop until they consume all that is good in this world. You must prepare. Aaron clenched his fists. The idea of more of those creatures roaming freely sent a shiver down his spine. But deep within, beneath the fear and uncertainty, there was something else. Something powerful. A fire had been lit inside him, and it refused to be extinguished. Then we fight, Aaron said, his voice steady. I need to know everything. How to control this power. How to stop them. I won't let this happen to anyone else. The black wolf let out a satisfied growl, while the silver wolf dipped its head in approval. Then your true journey begins, Guardian. As the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, Aaron took a final look at the ruins of his past life. He wasn't just a lone man in the wilderness anymore. He was something more, something stronger, and whatever came next, he was ready. Aaron tightened his grip on the silver pendant the wolves had given him, its intricate carvings glowing faintly under his touch. The knowledge of his newfound purpose still felt surreal, but he had no time for doubt. The Shadowborn were coming, and he had to be ready. Where do we begin? He asked, his voice steady despite the turmoil raging inside him. The silver wolf, whom he now knew as Nyx, stepped forward. You must learn to harness the power within you. The energy you felt in battle was only a fraction of what you are capable of. Aaron took a deep breath, his mind racing. So how do I control it? How do I make sure I'm strong enough when they return? The black wolf, Varys, let out a low growl. Strength is not just in the body. It is in the spirit, in the will to fight. The Shadowborn feed on fear and despair. You must master your mind before you can master your power. Nyx nodded. We will take you to the elders. They have been waiting for the Guardian's awakening. They will show you the path. Aaron glanced at the forest beyond his wrecked cabin. The towering trees stood like silent sentinels, their dark forms stretching endlessly into the unknown. He had spent years believing he was alone in this wilderness, yet now it was as if the land itself had been watching, waiting for this moment. "Then let's go," he said, determination settling into his bones. "No more waiting." Nix and Varys exchanged a knowing look before turning toward the shadows of the trees. "Follow us," Nix commanded. As they ventured deeper into the forest, the air grew heavy with an unnatural stillness. The further they walked, the more Aaron sensed a presence, something ancient, something watching. It wasn't menacing, but it was powerful. After what felt like hours, they arrived at a hidden clearing. At its center stood a massive stone monolith, covered in symbols that pulsed with a rhythmic light. Surrounding it were figures cloaked in deep blue robes, their faces obscured by hoods. "The Guardian has arrived," one of them spoke, their voice resonating with an ethereal echo. Aaron felt an unseen force weigh upon him, testing him, measuring him. The pendant around his neck grew warm, responding to the energy in the air. "You have awakened, but you are not yet complete," another elder said. "To defeat the Shadowborn, you must embrace what you are meant to become." Aaron met their unseen gazes, resolve burning in his chest. "Then teach me. Make me ready." The elders extended their hands, the air around them shimmering with ancient power. "Then let the trials begin." The moment the elders raised their hands, the entire clearing was engulfed in a pulsating blue light. Aaron felt his body being lifted off the ground, suspended in midair, as an immense energy coursed through him. It wasn't painful, but it was overwhelming. A force so ancient and powerful that it seemed to transcend time itself. "Let the first trial commence," one of the elders intoned, their voice echoing through the sacred grove. Aaron's surroundings shifted instantly. He was no longer in the clearing, but standing in a vast expanse of ice and snow, a blizzard raging around him. The wind howled, biting at his skin, but what truly unnerved him was the feeling of being watched. Then he saw them, shadows moving within the storm. The Shadowborn. Aaron had faced them before, but this was different. They no longer resembled the wraith-like creatures from his first encounter. Now they had taken solid form, hulking, twisted beasts with glowing red eyes and gaping maws filled with jagged teeth. They encircled him, their guttural growls resonating through the frozen air. Aaron clenched his fists, feeling the pendant's warmth against his chest. He knew this was a test, but that didn't make it any less real. He had to fight. The first Shadowborn lunged, claws outstretched. Aaron reacted on instinct, dodging just in time. The moment he moved, he felt a surge of energy flood his limbs, his reflexes sharper, his senses heightened. He spun around, striking the creature with a force that sent it skidding across the ice. More came at him, each faster than the last. He fought with everything he had, using the power within him, but the creatures were relentless. No matter how many he struck down, more emerged from the storm. His breathing became ragged, exhaustion creeping in. Then he heard a voice, not from the elders, not from his wolves, but from deep within him. "You are more than just a warrior. You are the bridge between man and beast. Embrace the bond." At that moment, a piercing howl cut through the storm. Nix and Varys appeared beside him, their silver and black fur glowing with an ethereal light. Their eyes met his, and something clicked within Aaron, a realization he had been missing all along. He was not meant to fight alone. Drawing upon their energy, Aaron felt a transformation take place. His senses expanded beyond human limitations, his body moving with an agility and strength he had never known. He fought alongside Nix and Varys, their movements synchronized, in perfect harmony. The Shadowborn fell one by one, unable to match their combined force. The storm began to wane, the darkness retreating as the last of the creatures crumbled into the snow. Aaron stood amidst the remnants of battle, his chest heaving, his mind clearer than ever. The first trial was complete. As the icy landscape faded, he found himself back in the clearing, the elders watching him with unreadable expressions. "You have passed the trial of unity," one of them spoke. "But greater challenges await." Aaron nodded, determination burning in his gaze. "Then I'm ready. What's next?" The elders merely extended their hands once more, and the world around him shifted again. Aaron barely had time to process his victory before the world around him shifted again. The clearing dissolved into shadows, and he felt himself being pulled through the void. When he landed, the air around him was thick and humid, the scent of earth and damp vegetation filling his nostrils. He was in a dense, ancient forest. The towering trees loomed above him, their twisted branches forming an almost impenetrable canopy. The light was dim, filtered through thick layers of moss and vines. The silence was unsettling. Not even the chirp of an insect could be heard. Then came the whisper. A soft, barely audible voice carried through the air, speaking words he could not understand. Aaron turned, trying to locate the source, but all he saw were shadows shifting between the trees. His heart pounded as he realized he was not alone. "Welcome to the trial of the spirit." A deep voice resonated from the darkness. From the mist emerged a figure, tall and shrouded in an emerald cloak. Their face was obscured by a hood, but their presence radiated immense power. "This trial will test your soul, your will, and your past. You cannot fight your way through this challenge. You must face what lies within." Before Aaron could respond, the world around him twisted again. He found himself standing in a familiar place, his childhood home. His breath caught in his throat. The small wooden house stood just as he remembered it, the scent of pine and fresh bread lingering in the air. Laughter echoed from inside. His parents' voices. He stepped forward, drawn by the warmth, but as he reached for the door, it dissolved into ash. The laughter turned to screams. Aaron staggered back as the scene changed again. He was no longer a child, but standing in a battlefield. Bodies lay scattered, the smell of blood and fire choking his lungs. His hands were covered in crimson. He had failed them. "No," he whispered, his chest tightening. A shadow loomed over him, taking the form of a familiar face, himself. But this version of him had hollow eyes, filled with regret and pain. It stepped forward, its voice a chilling whisper. "You can't change the past. You are weak. You are alone." Aaron clenched his fists, his heartbeat pounding in his ears. "No, I am not alone." The shadow smirked. "Then prove it." A surge of energy erupted around him. Nyx and Varys materialized beside him, their eyes burning with determination. The bond they shared had never been stronger. Aaron took a deep breath and stepped forward. "I accept my past, but it does not define me." Light burst from within him, shattering the illusion. The battlefield, the pain, the regret, it all faded. When the light dimmed, he found himself back in the ancient forest. The hooded figure watched him in silence before finally speaking. "You have passed the trial of the spirit." Aaron exhaled, his entire body trembling. The second trial was over, but he knew the hardest was yet to come. "The final trial awaits," the figure said. "And this time, you will not face it alone." The hooded figure stepped closer, their emerald cloak shifting with an ethereal energy. Aaron could feel the weight of their gaze, though their face remained obscured. The final trial was upon him, and this time he would not be alone. The dense forest around them suddenly shuddered, the trees bending and twisting as if alive. A low hum vibrated through the air, growing into a deep, reverberating chant. The ground beneath Aaron's feet trembled, and then a portal of swirling silver light burst open before them. Nyx and Varys flanked Aaron, their eyes reflecting the mystical glow. The hooded figure extended a hand toward the portal. "Beyond this threshold lies the trial of unity," intoned. "To succeed, you must forge an unbreakable bond, not only with your companions, but with yourself." Aaron swallowed hard. He had conquered his past, but could he truly place unwavering trust in those around him? Was he ready to rely on Nyx and Varys with his very soul? There was only one way to find out. He stepped through the portal. A rush of icy wind slammed into Aaron as he stumbled onto an unfamiliar landscape. He was standing on a floating island of stone, suspended in an endless sky of swirling storm clouds. Lightning crackled in the distance, illuminating a colossal bridge leading to an ancient ruined citadel. But something was wrong. Nyx and Varys were nowhere to be seen. Aaron's heart pounded. Had they not made it through? Before he could call out, a voice echoed from the heavens. Trust is not given, it is earned. The ground trembled, and from the swirling mist emerged two monstrous beings, mirror images of Nyx and Varys, twisted and corrupted. Their eyes glowed an eerie red, and their snarling forms radiated a dark energy. Aaron instinctively reached for his weapon, but the disembodied voice spoke again. To fight them is to fight yourself. Only through unity will you find the truth. Aaron froze. The trial wasn't about battle. It was about connection. He took a deep breath and lowered his stance. The monstrous forms advanced, their snarls turning into deep growls. Instead of attacking, Aaron reached out. I trust you, he whispered. Trust Nyx. I trust Varys. And I trust myself. The creatures hesitated. Their red eyes flickered, their snarls wavering. Then, with a blinding flash, they shattered into beams of light. Nyx and Varys reappeared beside him, whole and unharmed. Aaron exhaled sharply, his chest heaving. The citadel doors groaned open before them, and the hooded figure's voice whispered through the wind. You have proven your unity. Now, claim your destiny. As Aaron, Nyx, and Varys stepped through the towering citadel gates, an eerie silence engulfed them. The air was thick with an ancient energy, whispering through the stone corridors like ghostly echoes from the past. The path ahead was lined with flickering blue torches, their flames casting shifting shadows against the cracked walls. Stay close, Aaron murmured, gripping the hilt of his blade. We don't know what's waiting for us. Nyx nodded, her keen eyes scanning the dark expanse. Varys reached for his bow, the tension in his muscles evident. Together, they pressed forward, their footsteps barely making a sound against the cold stone floor. A sudden gust of wind howled through the hallway, extinguishing several torches at once. The darkness closed in, suffocating and absolute. Then, from the abyss ahead, a deep voice rumbled. You have proven unity, but now you must prove resilience. The ground beneath them trembled. Aaron barely had time to react before the floor shattered, plunging them into a void of swirling shadows. Aaron awoke to the sound of rushing water. His vision was blurred, but as he blinked rapidly, his surroundings came into focus. He was on the shore of a vast black lake. The sky above was a swirling storm of deep purples and blues, an unnatural aurora stretching across the horizon. He turned sharply. Nyx? Varys? No response. Panic twisted in his gut. He forced himself to stand, scanning the desolate landscape. Towering cliffs loomed in the distance, their jagged edges cutting into the sky like the fangs of some ancient beast. A narrow bridge extended from the shore toward a floating island at the center of the lake, where a lone hooded figure stood waiting. Aaron's fists clenched. He knew that figure, the same one who had guided and tested them before. Stealing himself, he started across the bridge. The planks groaned under his weight, but Aaron pressed forward. The closer he got, the heavier the air became, as though some unseen force was pressing down on him. When he finally reached the island, the figure turned, revealing a face he never expected. It was him, a perfect reflection. Yet, the eyes were different, colder, filled with something darker. This doppelganger smirked, drawing a gleaming sword identical to Aaron's own. Resilience is not about standing tall, the copy said, voice like a distant echo. It is about rising when you Aaron barely had time to react before his own reflection lunged. Aaron barely had time to react before his doppelganger's blade came slashing toward him. Instinct took over. He raised his sword just in time to block the strike, sparks flying as metal clashed against metal. The force sent him stumbling back, his boots skidding against the stone floor of the floating island. His reflection advanced with unnerving speed, each movement precise and calculated. It was as if he was fighting a perfected version of himself, one that had no hesitation, no fear. Aaron parried another strike, then countered with a swift thrust, but his double sidestepped effortlessly. The doppelganger smirked. "You hesitate. That is your weakness." A growl of frustration built in Aaron's chest. "I don't hesitate, I strategize." The reflection lunged again, but this time Aaron met the attack head-on, locking blades with his opponent. Their faces were inches apart, eyes burning with mirrored determination. "Why are you doing this?" Aaron demanded. "Who are you?" The reflection pushed him back with an unnatural strength, causing him to stumble once more. "I am what you could become, what you fear to be, what you need to embrace." Aaron's breath came in ragged gasps. He glanced around the floating island, searching for any advantage, but the landscape was barren. No cover, no escape. Just him and the thing that wore his face. Then a thought struck him. Fighting himself wasn't the answer. He sheathed his sword and stood tall. "I won't fight you." The reflection tilted its head, a flicker of surprise in its cold eyes. "Then you have already lost." It charged again, but Aaron didn't move. He exhaled steadily, keeping his focus. The doppelganger's blade whistled through the air and stopped inches from Aaron's throat. A ripple of energy surged through the island, and the reflection froze. Its form shimmered like a mirage before cracking, fractures spreading across its body like broken glass. The smirk faded. "You understand now?" Aaron nodded. "Strength isn't just about fighting. It's about knowing when not to." The reflection gave a slow, approving nod before it shattered completely, dissolving into a swirl of golden embers. The island trembled. The sky above darkened, and the lake below roared as if awakened from slumber. A voice, deep and ancient, echoed across the void. "You have passed the trial of resilience." The world blurred. When Aaron's vision cleared, he found himself standing at the edge of a vast stone courtyard. Towering pillars surrounded him, their surfaces etched with glowing runes. A grand staircase led to an enormous set of doors, each engraved with swirling patterns that pulsed with an otherworldly energy. He turned sharply, searching for his friends. "Nyx? Varys? We're here." Nyx's voice came from behind him. Relief flooded Aaron as he saw both Nyx and Varys emerging from opposite sides of the courtyard, looking equally disoriented but unharmed. Varys rubbed his temples. "What just happened? I was in some kind of dark realm. There were shadows. They spoke to me." Nyx shuddered. "I had to walk through a storm of fire. Every step felt like I was burning alive." Aaron nodded slowly. "We were tested, each of us. Before they could process further, the grand doors ahead began to groan open, revealing a massive chamber bathed in golden light. The trio exchanged wary glances before stepping inside. The chamber was unlike anything they had ever seen. The walls were made of shifting light, forming ever-changing images, scenes of battles long past, heroes rising and falling, civilizations being built and destroyed. At the center of the room stood a colossal throne, carved from obsidian and adorned with glowing sigils. Seated upon it was a figure cloaked in a robe of shimmering silver, their face obscured by a hood. The figure raised a hand. "You have done well to reach this place. Few have." Aaron clenched his fists. "Who are you?" The figure chuckled, the sound like wind through ancient trees. "I am the keeper of the veil, the guardian of what lies beyond. And you, Aaron, have been chosen." Aaron's heart pounded. Chosen for what? The keeper stood, their presence filling the chamber with an overwhelming energy. To decide the fate of the world. Nyx and Varys tensed beside Aaron. He swallowed hard. "What do you mean?" The keeper gestured to the swirling images on the walls. "The balance of power is shifting. A great darkness stirs beyond the veil. One that threatens to consume all. You three are the last line of defense, but you must make a choice." Varys' voice was steady. "What kind of choice?" The keeper's hooded head tilted slightly. "To embrace your destiny and face the coming storm, or turn away, leaving the world to its fate." Silence stretched between them. The weight of the moment pressed down like a physical force. Aaron looked at his friends, then back at the keeper. He took a deep breath and made his choice. Aaron's breath steadied as he stepped forward. "We won't turn away. If we're the last line of defense, then we'll stand and fight." The keeper of the veil nodded approvingly. "So be it." With a wave of their hand, the golden light in the chamber dimmed, and the swirling images on the walls coalesced into a single vision, a vast, shadowed landscape stretching into infinity. The sky choked with swirling black clouds. Nyx tightened her grip on the daggers at her waist. "That doesn't look welcoming." Varys, always the skeptic, studied the scene with narrowed eyes. "Where is this?" "The boundary," the keeper answered. "A realm between existence and oblivion. It is where the darkness gathers its strength, where it prepares to break through." Aaron stepped closer to the vision, feeling an unnatural pull toward it. "And you want us to go there?" The keeper extended their arm, and a shimmering portal appeared in the center of the chamber. "Your trials have proven your resolve, but the battle ahead will test your very souls. If you enter this gateway, there is no turning back." Nyx exhaled sharply. "Well, we've come this far." She exchanged a glance with Aaron and Varys. "Might as well see this through." Aaron met her gaze and then turned to Varys, who sighed and shook his head. "We're going to regret this, aren't we?" "Probably," Aaron said with a grin before stepping into the portal. The sensation of falling was immediate, like being pulled through a current of pure energy. Aaron braced himself, but there was no ground, no sky, only motion, and a rushing wind that whispered unintelligible voices into his ears. Then, abruptly, they landed. Aaron stumbled forward, his boots crunching against dry, cracked earth. The air smelled of ash and something more ancient, something rotten. He lifted his gaze and saw an endless wasteland beneath a swirling void. Jagged spires of obsidian jutted from the ground, and in the distance, a massive citadel loomed, its silhouette broken against the oppressive darkness. Nyx landed beside him, rolling to a stop with surprising grace. "That was unpleasant." Varys appeared next, groaning. "I hate magic travel." He brushed himself off, looking around. "Where exactly are we?" "The boundary," Aaron murmured. He felt something gnawing at the edge of his mind, a whisper, a presence unseen. It sent a shiver down his spine. Then, the ground trembled. Nyx's daggers were out in an instant. "Tell me that was just an earthquake." Aaron drew his sword. "I doubt it." The shadows moved. They emerged from the ground, from the air itself. Figures, wrapped in darkness, their eyes burning with a sickly green glow. They had no faces, no mouths, yet their presence exuded malice. One of them raised a clawed hand, and a guttural voice echoed in Aaron's mind. "You do not belong here." Aaron tightened, his grip on his sword. "That's too bad. We're here anyway." The creature lunged. Aaron barely had time to react as the first shadow swiped at him. He dodged, feeling the air distort where its claws passed. Nyx was already moving, her daggers flashing as she struck at the nearest enemy, but her blade passed, through it like mist. Varys gritted his teeth. "They're not solid." Aaron adjusted his stance, recalling the words of the keeper. "Your trials have proven your resolve, but the battle ahead will test your very souls." He closed his eyes for a fraction of a second, reaching inward. Strength isn't just about fighting. It's about knowing when not to. When he opened his eyes, the glow of the shadows flickered. They hesitated. Aaron took a step forward, lowering his sword. We're not here to destroy. We're here to stop what's coming. The leading shadow tilted its head. The whispers around them grew louder, then softer. Finally, the creature lowered its hand. Prove it. Aaron exchanged glances with Nyx and Varys before nodding. Take us to whoever leads you. The shadows hesitated, then began to move, parting like a river to reveal a path toward the distant citadel. Aaron took a deep breath and stepped forward. The fate of the world awaited. Aaron took a deep breath, steadying himself. The weight of the Keeper's words pressed against him like an unseen force. He could feel Nyx and Varys standing beside him, their presence a reminder that he was not alone in this. I will face the coming storm, Aaron declared, his voice unwavering. Nyx exhaled sharply, gripping her staff. Then we stand with you. Varys crossed his arms, nodding. No turning back now. The Keeper of the Veil observed them silently, then slowly raised both hands. The shifting images on the walls flickered violently, distorting into chaos before resolving into a single vision. A vast battlefield where a monstrous force loomed. Shadows swirled at its core, twisting and writhing as they devoured everything in their path. This is what awaits, the Keeper intoned. A darkness older than time itself. It has been sealed away for millennia, but the barrier weakens. Soon, it will break free. Aaron clenched his fists. How do we stop it? The Keeper stepped forward, their form becoming more defined. A tall figure, their silver robe gleaming under the ethereal light. 3 artifacts exist. Ancient relics imbued with the power to strengthen the veil. If you find them before the darkness emerges, you may have a chance to reseal it. Nyx frowned. And if we fail? The Keeper's gaze darkened. Then the world as you know it will cease to exist. Silence settled over them. The enormity of their task loomed, but there was no room for doubt. They had made their choice. Where do we begin? Aaron asked. The Keeper waved a hand and the throne room trembled. A swirling portal materialized before them, shimmering with hues of deep blue and violet. The first artifact rests in the abyssal ruins, hidden beneath the forgotten sea. The Keeper said, There, you will face trials unlike any before. But beware, the darkness has already begun its reach. You will not be alone in your search. Aaron nodded, gripping the hilt of his sword. Then let's go. Without hesitation, he stepped into the portal. Nyx and Varys followed, and the world around them twisted and blurred. The moment they emerged, icy water surged up to their waists. The air was thick with the scent of salt and decay. They stood within a half-submerged temple, its once grand. Pillars now crumbling, devoured by time and the relentless sea. Great, Varys muttered, shaking water from his sleeves. Of all the places, it had to be a sunken ruin. Nyx scanned the area. Something isn't right. It's too quiet. Aaron agreed. The stillness was unnatural. The only sound was the gentle lapping of water against the temple walls. Then, from the shadows, something moved. A deep guttural growl echoed through the ruins. Aaron's sword was in his hands before he had time to think. Nyx's staff crackled with energy, while Varys reached for his daggers. Dark shapes slithered in the water, their eyes glowing like embers. Then, with an ear-splitting screech, they attacked. Shadows surged toward them, solidifying into monstrous forms with elongated limbs and jagged teeth. Aaron swung his blade, striking one down, but more emerged. We can't fight them all, Nyx shouted, unleashing a burst of fire that sent several creatures shrieking into the depths. Varys vaulted onto a broken pillar, hurling knives into the mass. We need to move, now! Aaron spotted an archway at the far end of the temple. There, go! They fought their way forward, cutting through the darkness. As they reached the archway, a sudden force slammed into Aaron, knocking him into the water. The cold stole his breath as something coiled around his leg, dragging him down. The last thing he saw before darkness swallowed him was Nyx and Varys, reaching for him, their voices drowned by the abyss. Aaron's breath came slow and steady as the Keeper's words settled over him. The weight of fate itself now rested on his shoulders, but he could not allow doubt to fester. He turned to Nyx and Varys, searching their eyes for any sign of hesitation. Nyx's fingers twitched, flames subtly flickering at her fingertips. "We've come too far to turn back now." Varys, ever the pragmatist, sighed deeply before giving a firm nod. "If this darkness is real, then we have no choice. We fight." The Keeper of the Veil studied them for a long moment, then lifted a hand. The walls of shifting light erupted into a spiraling vortex, each swirling image morphing into an ominous scene. Shadowed armies stretching beyond the horizon, monstrous figures rising from the depths of blackened chasms, entire cities reduced to ruin beneath a blood-red sky. Aaron clenched his jaws. "Tell us what we need to do." The Keeper's voice was solemn. "There is an artifact, the Heart of Eternity. It is the last remnant of the old god's power, hidden beyond the veil, sealed within the nexus of time." Nyx narrowed her eyes. "And let me guess, it won't be easy to retrieve." "The nexus exists outside of time itself. To reach it, you must traverse the echoing abyss, a realm where past and future collide. Many have sought it. None have returned." Varys exhaled sharply. "So, another impossible mission. Just our luck." Aaron squared his shoulders. "How do we enter the echoing abyss?" The Keeper extended a hand, and from the swirling light emerged an ancient map, its parchment darkened with age, the markings shifting as though alive. Aaron reached out and took it, feeling a strange energy pulse beneath his fingertips. "The map will guide you to the abyss. But beware. Once you enter, time itself will turn against you." Aaron nodded. "We'll be ready." The Keeper's hooded form began to fade, their voice echoing one last warning. "Trust not what you see, nor what you remember. The abyss feeds on deception." Then they were alone, standing in the vast chamber with only the map and the uncertain path ahead. The journey to the echoing abyss was treacherous. They traveled across snow-covered mountains, through dense forests where shadows moved without light, and over barren wastelands where the air itself whispered forgotten names. Finally, they arrived. The abyss stretched before them, an endless chasm of swirling darkness. Jagged stone platforms hovered in midair, forming a precarious path leading into the unknown. Nyx took a steadying breath. "This place feels wrong." Aaron gripped the hilt of his sword. "Stay close. No matter what happens, we don't split up." With that, they stepped into the echoing abyss. Almost immediately, the world twisted. The sky above became a shifting storm of memories, scenes from their past, fragmented and distorted. The ground beneath them flickered, sometimes solid, sometimes dissolving into mist. Varys cursed under his breath. "I hate this place already." Then the first illusion struck. A figure appeared before Aaron. It was his father. The man's eyes, filled with sorrow, met Aaron's. "You failed me, son." Aaron froze, his heart pounding. He knew it wasn't real. His father had died long ago. And yet, the pain felt fresh. Nyx grabbed his arm. "Aaron, it's not him. Keep moving." With great effort, he tore his gaze away and pressed forward. As they traversed the abyss, more visions emerged. Nyx saw her lost sister, pleading for help. Varys was confronted by the ghosts of his fallen comrades. Each illusion was perfectly crafted to break them. And then the whispers began. They slithered through the air, their voices eerily familiar. "You are not strong enough. You will fail." Aaron gritted his teeth. "Ignore them." The abyss fought harder. The path beneath them shifted violently. The stone platforms trembled, and the darkness surged upwards, forming shadowy figures, twisted versions of themselves, their doppelgangers grinning with malevolent intent. Aaron drew his sword. "We fight together." The battle erupted in a blur of steel and fire. Each doppelganger matched them perfectly, predicting their every move. Blades clashed, spells collided, the very air crackling with energy. But Aaron remembered his first trial. the fight against himself. The key wasn't to fight harder, it was to understand. With a deep breath, he lowered his weapon and met his double's gaze. "I am not afraid of you." The shadow hesitated. Aaron took a step forward. "You are nothing but my doubt, and I do not fear doubt." The doppelganger snarled, then began to unravel, dissolving into wisps of darkness. One by one, Nyx and Varys followed his lead, facing their shadows with unwavering resolve. The illusion shattered, the whispers faded, the abyss trembled in protest. Then, the darkness parted, revealing an enormous gateway pulsating with blue energy. Varys let out a breathless laugh. "We made it?" Aaron stepped toward the gateway. "We're not done yet." They crossed the threshold, leaving the echoing abyss behind. What lay beyond was a realm unlike any they had ever seen. A vast, shimmering expanse stretched before them, where time flowed like a river, its currents shifting between past, present, and future. At its center, floating above a radiant pedestal, was the heart of eternity, an orb of swirling cosmic energy, pulsing with raw power. Nyx's eyes widened. "That's it." Aaron reached out, feeling its immense energy calling to him. Then the entire realm trembled. A booming voice rang out. "You dare seek the heart?" From the mist, a colossal figure emerged, a guardian of time itself, clad in golden armor, its eyes burning with ancient fire. Aaron tightened his grip on his sword. The final trial had begun. Aaron took a deep breath, his heart pounding like a war drum. The weight of the decision pressed down on him, but he knew there was only one choice. "We'll fight," he said, his voice steady. "If there's a darkness coming, then we'll stand against it." Nyx and Varys nodded in agreement, determination burning in their eyes. The Keeper of the Veil inclined their heads slightly, as if acknowledging their resolve. "Very well. The path forward is set." With a wave of the Keeper's hand, the walls of the chamber shimmered and shifted. The swirling images of the past faded, replaced by visions of what lay ahead, a world teetering on the edge of chaos. Cities consumed by shadow, skies burning with unnatural storms, creatures of nightmare clawing their way into reality. "The darkness is already moving," the Keeper said. "It seeks the heart of the Veil, an ancient artifact that maintains the balance between realms. If it falls into the wrong hands, all will be lost." Aaron felt a chill crawl up his spine. "Where is it?" The Keeper extended their hand, and in the air before them, a map materialized, floating, glowing with pulsating energy. It showed a vast continent, with a single point marked in deep crimson, the ruins of Valtorin, an ancient city buried beneath time and myth. "You must reach the heart before the forces of the abyss do," the Keeper warned. "But be cautious. You are not the only one seeking it." As the words hung in the air, the chamber trembled violently. The golden glow flickered, and a deep, guttural growl echoed through the space. Nyx spun around. "What was that?" "The us." Keeper's head tilted upward as if sensing something unseen. "They have found us." Before anyone could react, the great doors of the chamber burst open, shattering like glass. A wave of dark energy surged inside, and from the swirling black mist stepped a figure wrapped in flowing obsidian robes. Their face was hidden beneath a hood, but their presence was suffocating, a force of pure malice. The Keeper's voice hardened. "The Harbinger!" Aaron's grip tightened around his sword. He could feel the air crackling with power. The Harbinger's voice was like a whisper, through dead leaves. "So these are your champions, Keeper." A dry chuckle followed. "They look fragile." Varys growled, already drawing his daggers. "Come closer, and I'll show you just how fragile we are." The Harbinger extended a hand, and from the darkness behind him, monstrous figures emerged. Twisted creatures with hollow eyes and elongated limbs, their bodies pulsating with unnatural energy. Aaron felt his pulse quicken. The battle was about to begin. The Keeper turned to them, urgency in their tone. "You must go, now." "But..." Aaron started to protest, but the Keeper raised their hand. "I will hold them here. Your mission is more important. The chamber shook again, cracks forming along the walls. The Harbinger stepped forward, shadows curling around his form. You cannot stop what has already begun, Keeper. Aaron clenched his teeth. He hated the idea of running, but he knew they couldn't afford to lose time. Come on, Nyx shouted, grabbing his arm. Varys was already moving toward a newly opened passageway that had appeared behind the throne. A hidden exit. Aaron hesitated for only a moment before turning and sprinting after them. The last thing he saw before the doors slammed shut behind them was the Keeper raising their hands, summoning a storm of golden light as the Harbinger's forces rushed forward. The corridor they ran through was long and winding, lined with ancient torches that flared to life as they passed. The air was thick with the scent of old magic and dust. Nyx was breathing hard. We need to move faster. If the Harbinger's minions catch up, a deep guttural screech echoed behind them. Aaron cursed under his breath. They're already coming. They reached the end of the corridor, where an ornate stone archway stood. Inscribed across the top were glowing runes, pulsing with an eerie blue light. What is this? Varys asked. Nyx examined the runes quickly. A portal, but it's unstable. Aaron didn't hesitate. He placed a hand on the stone, feeling a surge of energy rush through him. The runes pulsed brighter, and the air within the archway began to swirl. Behind them, the darkness was closing in. No time, Aaron said. We jump now. Nyx gritted her teeth. Hope this doesn't kill us. One by one, they leapt into the portal, and the world around them shattered into light. When Aaron regained his senses, he found himself lying on damp grass, the scent of rain filling his lungs. His body ached, and his head was spinning. Slowly, he pushed himself up and looked around. They were in a vast open field beneath a sky streaked with violet and silver. The grass beneath them shimmered faintly, almost as if it were alive. In the distance, ruins stretched across the horizon, massive stone structures half buried in the earth. Nyx groaned as she sat up beside him. Well, that wasn't fun. Varys, lying a few feet away, let out a cough. Next time, let's try teleporting somewhere soft. Aaron managed a small chuckle before standing. We made it. Nyx followed his gaze to the ruins. That's Valtorin. A cold wind blew past them, carrying whispers, faint, haunting voices that sent chills down Aaron's spine. We're not alone, Varys muttered, already gripping his weapons. Aaron exhaled, steadying himself. The real battle was about to begin. Heavy silence blanketed the ruins as Aaron, Nyx, and Varys stepped forward. The remnants of Valtorin loomed ahead, crumbling towers and shattered stone walls whispering forgotten secrets. The violet-streaked sky above pulsed faintly, as if the land itself was alive. Aaron tightened his grip on his sword. We need to find the heart of the Vale before the Harbinger's forces catch up. Nyx nodded, scanning their surroundings. There should be some kind of central structure, the old archives or a temple. That's where artifacts like this are usually kept. Varys crouched near a broken pillar, running his fingers over faint etchings carved into the stone. These markings, they tell a story. His brow furrowed. Something about a guardian. Aaron glanced over his shoulder. Guardian? Varys nodded, his voice tense. A protector bound to the heart. If it's still here, we might have to fight it. Before Aaron could respond, a distant sound echoed through the ruins. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, accompanied by a faint metallic clinking. Nyx swore under her breath. We're not alone. From the shadows of the ruins, figures emerged. Their armor was ancient, rusted yet still formidable. Their eyes glowed with an eerie blue light, and their movements were unnatural, jerky, as if they were being controlled by an unseen force. Valtorans, fallen knights, Varys whispered. They've been turned into sentinels. The leading knight raised a sword, its voice a hollow rasp. You trespass upon sacred ground. Turn back, or be judged. Aaron set his stance. We don't have time for this. Nyx flicked her wrist, summoning a dagger into her hand. We never do. Without another word, the knights attacked. Aaron barely had time to raise his blade before the first knight struck. Sparks flew as metal clashed against metal. He pushed forward, parrying a second strike and countering with a quick slash that barely dented the knight's armor. Varys moved like a shadow, slipping past an attacking knight and driving his daggers into the gaps between its armor. It staggered but didn't fall. Nyx spun, using her speed to her advantage, slicing at weak points. "These things don't go down easy," Aaron gritted his teeth, ducking under a heavy swing. "Then we hit harder." He channeled his energy, his blade, glowing with a faint golden light. With a powerful upward slash, he shattered the armor of the knight in front of him. The spectral energy inside it flickered before vanishing. One down, but more were coming. "We need to get to the temple," Nyx shouted. Aaron caught his breath. "Then we run." As one, they broke away, sprinting deeper into the ruins. The knights pursued, their heavy footsteps echoing behind them. Ahead, a grand structure stood, a massive temple, its entrance guarded by a pair of colossal stone doors. Ancient glyphs glowed faintly on the surface. Aaron reached it first and slammed his hands against the doors. "Come on, open!" Nyx examined the glyphs. "It's sealed. There must be a way." Varys pointed. "Look!" On the door, an indentation shaped like a hand pulsed with light. Without hesitation, Aaron pressed his palm against it. The ground rumbled, the doors groaned, and slowly swung open. "Inside now!" Nyx yelled. They rushed in just as the knights closed in, but before the undead warriors could follow, the doors slammed shut with a resounding boom. Darkness enveloped them. Then torches lining the walls flared to life, illuminating the vast chamber. At its center stood an ancient pedestal, and atop it, resting within a swirling vortex of energy, was a crystalline heart, pulsing with raw power. "The heart of the Vale," Varys whispered. Aaron stepped forward, awed by the sheer energy radiating from it. But before he could reach it, the room trembled. A deep, rumbling voice echoed through the chamber. "Who dares seek the heart?" From the shadows, something massive stirred, and the Guardian awoke. The ground beneath Aaron, Nyx, and Varys trembled as the Guardian emerged from the shadows. It was enormous, an armored colossus with a body of black stone, its veins glowing, with the same pulsing energy as the heart of the Vale. Its eyes burned like twin suns, filled with ancient wisdom and unyielding purpose. "You seek the heart," the Guardian's voice rumbled, shaking the chamber. "But power is not freely given. It must be earned." Aaron stepped forward, gripping his sword. "We've come to protect the Vale from the Harbinger. The world is on the brink of destruction." The Guardian tilted its massive head. "Many have claimed such purpose. Most were driven by fear, others by greed. The heart does not choose the weak or the unworthy." Without warning, the Guardian raised its colossal arm. A blast of pure energy erupted from its core, sending the trio sprawling. The force sent Aaron skidding across the floor, barely managing to roll to his feet. Nyx wiped blood from her lip. "I guess we're doing this the hard way." Varys smirked. "Wouldn't be the first time." The Guardian charged, its footsteps shaking the temple. Aaron dodged to the side, swinging his sword in a glowing arc. The blade met stone, but the Guardian barely flinched. It retaliated with a devastating swipe of its massive arm. Aaron barely managed to throw up his blade in time, but the impact sent him crashing into a pillar. Varys and Nyx circled around, attacking from both sides. Nyx's daggers sparked against the Guardian's armor, while Varys aimed for its glowing veins, striking with precision. But their weapons barely made a dent. "This isn't working," Nyx shouted. Aaron coughed, his vision spinning. His body screamed in pain, but he pushed himself to his feet. He looked at the heart, still floating on the pedestal, pulsing with energy. And then he understood. Fighting wasn't the answer. It never had been. This was just like the trial of resilience. The Guardian wasn't an enemy. It was a test. Aaron dropped his sword. "Stop," he called out, his voice steady. Nyx and Varys hesitated, stepping back. The Guardian loomed over Aaron, its massive form radiating power. "I won't fight you," Aaron said firmly. Because true strength isn't about destruction. It's about knowing when to stand firm and when to let go. The Guardian remained still. Then slowly, the glow in its eyes shifted, no longer burning with aggression, but with something else. Understanding. You have learned what so many before you could not. The Guardian's voice was softer now, almost reverent. To wield power without seeking control. To embrace strength without letting it consume you. You have proven yourself worthy. The chamber trembled again, but this time it was not from battle. The heart of the veil pulsed brighter, its energy reaching out. Aaron stepped forward and extended his hand. The moment his fingers brushed the crystal, a blinding surge of light enveloped the room. His mind flooded with knowledge, visions of the past and future colliding in an overwhelming cascade of power. He saw the creation of the veil, the wars fought over it, the countless souls who had failed this very trial. And then, he saw the future. A storm of darkness sweeping across the land, the Harbinger's forces tearing through cities, devouring everything in their path. A world on the brink of oblivion. Aaron gasped as the visions faded. When he opened his eyes, the Guardian was kneeling before him. The heart is now bound to you, it said. Use it wisely. The battle ahead will test you more than anything before. Aaron turned to his friends who were watching with awe. Nyx gave a small smile. So, what now, Chosen One? Aaron exhaled. Now, we stop the Harbinger. The sky above Valtorin was ablaze. The Harbinger had arrived, a monstrous figure, wreathed in shadow and flame, stood at the edge of the ruins. Its form was shifting, half flesh, half nightmare, its presence warping reality itself. Around it, an army of twisted creatures crawled from the abyss, eyes glowing with malice. You are too late. The Harbinger's voice was like a chorus of tortured souls. The veil will shatter. The world will bow to the void. Aaron stood at the forefront, the heart of the veil pulsing within his chest. He could feel its power, its energy coursing through his veins. He knew what he had to do. He turned to Nyx and Varys. One last fight? Nyx twirled her daggers. Wouldn't miss it. Varys smirked. Let's make it count. The battle erupted in chaos. Nyx danced through the battlefield, striking with speed and precision. Varys moved like a shadow, his blades flashing as he took down the Harbinger's minions. But the darkness was endless, consuming everything in its path. Aaron faced the Harbinger head-on. Energy surged through him, the heart amplifying his every movement. The two clashed in a storm of light and shadow, their power shaking the very foundation of the world. But the Harbinger was relentless, its form twisted and reformed, each strike growing stronger. You cannot destroy me, it hissed. Darkness is eternal. Aaron's breath was ragged. He knew it was right. He couldn't destroy the Harbinger with brute force, but he could seal it away. Closing his eyes, he reached deep into the heart of the veil. He felt the energy within, the ancient force that maintained balance, and he let it flow. A brilliant light erupted from him, engulfing the battlefield. The Harbinger shrieked as golden chains formed around it, pulling it back, sealing it within the depths of the veil. The darkness fought, but it was no match for the light. With a final deafening roar, the Harbinger vanished. The storm cleared. The world was silent. Aaron fell to his knees, exhausted but victorious. Nyx and Varys ran to his side. You did it, Nyx whispered. Aaron looked at the sky, the first rays of dawn breaking through. The battle was over. The world was safe. For now.